I lost everything in a single afternoon. My career, my reputation, my sense of safety, all shredded by people I once trusted. The betrayal came from every direction: colleagues I'd mentored, friends who turned cold, even my own family doubting my side of the story. I was left with nothing but the echo of slammed doors and the certainty that someone, somewhere, was going to pay for what they'd done to me. You never really notice the moment your life starts to unravel, not until the threads are pooling at your feet, and you're standing in the middle of a mess you don't remember making. For me, it started with a meeting. Just a regular Tuesday. Or so I thought. The office was humming with the usual morning energy, the smell of burnt coffee and cheap perfume mixing in the air, and I was running late, as always. I'd been at Strathmore Solutions for almost a decade, long enough that the receptionist, Maribel, knew to have my mail stacked neatly by my door, and the IT guy, Tom, would fix my computer before I even knew it was broken. My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 41, mother to a stubborn, brilliant 12-year-old named Jonah, and, until that day, I was the Senior Client Relations Director at Strathmore's Chicago office. I'd started there when it was just a handful of us in a cramped loft above a bakery, everyone running on adrenaline and hope. We believed in the work, in each other, and in the promise that if we just pushed hard enough, we could build something real. I gave everything to that company. Late nights, weekends, birthdays, anniversaries, every milestone in Jonah's life marked by my absence, and a promise to make it up to him next time. I'd survived the layoffs, the mergers, the endless rounds of restructuring. I'd watched friends pack up their desks in silence, their names disappearing from the directory overnight. I thought I was safe. I was wrong. The meeting was called by HR, but when I walked in, the new regional VP, Leonard Drake, was there too. Leonard, with his perfect hair and shark smile, who always called me Ms. Monroe like he was reminding me who was in charge. Beside him sat Janice from HR, her hands folded tightly on the table, eyes darting everywhere but at me. "Rachel, thanks for coming in," Leonard began, his tone syrupy and false. "We've been reviewing compensation structures across the company, and, well, we've identified an opportunity to realign your role with current market standards." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. I stared at it, not understanding at first. My salary, slashed by more than half. My title, reduced to Regional Support Specialist. No mention of my team, my accounts, the clients I'd spent years cultivating. Just a number and a deadline. Accept by noon tomorrow, or your employment will be terminated. I didn't cry. Not there. I nodded, asked for 24 hours to consider, and walked out of that room with my head high. It wasn't until I reached the parking garage that I broke. I sat in my car, shaking, gasping for breath, the world spinning around me. How was I supposed to tell Jonah? How would I pay the mortgage, his school fees, the medical bills for his epilepsy? I'd built my whole life on the promise that hard work would protect us. Now it felt like a cruel joke. The betrayal stung even more because I'd seen it coming, in a way. The acquisition by Delaney Global had changed everything. The founder, Eric Strathmore, cashed out and vanished to some island, leaving the rest of us to fend for ourselves. The new management spoke in buzzwords and platitudes, but the reality was clear. Anyone who'd been there long enough to earn a real salary was a target. They wanted us gone, but they didn't want to pay severance. So they squeezed, hoping we'd break. I went home that night, numb. Jonah was at his friend's house, so I had the apartment to myself. I poured a glass of wine and stared at the offer letter, the numbers blurring together. I thought about calling my sister, but I knew what she'd say. "You'll land on your feet, Rach. You always do." But I didn't feel like I would this time. Just as I was about to shut down my laptop, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex Carter, an old friend who'd left Strathmore a year earlier. "Heard what happened. Call me. I might have something." I hesitated, but curiosity won out. Alex had landed at North Star Analytics, Strathmore's biggest rival. We hadn't spoken much since he left, but I remembered the way he'd warned me about the changes coming, how he'd told me to start looking for an exit. I called him, and he picked up on the first ring. "Rachel, I'm sorry," he said, and I could hear the sincerity in his voice. "Listen, we've been looking for someone to head up our Midwest client team. Your name keeps coming up. Would you be willing to talk to our CEO?" I almost laughed. Was I really about to jump ship to the competition? But what choice did I have? Strathmore had made it clear I was disposable. If North Star valued what I brought to the table, maybe it was time to stop being loyal to people who saw me as a line item. We set up a meeting for the next morning. I barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. I dug out my old employment contract, searching for a non-compete clause. Nothing. Another oversight from the early days, when we were too busy surviving to worry about legalities. Their mistake. At dawn, I dressed in my sharpest suit, the one I wore for big pitches. I dropped Jonah at school, promising him pancakes for dinner, and drove to North Star's downtown office. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, a world away from Strathmore's creaky charm. Alex met me in the lobby, looking older but happier than I remembered. He led me upstairs to a conference room where I met Olivia Chen, North Star's CEO. She was direct, no nonsense, the kind of leader who didn't waste words. "We know what happened at Strathmore," she said, sliding an offer letter across the table. "We know what you're worth. We're prepared to match your previous salary, plus a signing bonus. Full benefits for you and your son. We want you to lead our Midwest expansion." I stared at the numbers, disbelief warring with relief. "Why me?" I asked. Olivia didn't hesitate. "Because the clients you managed at Strathmore are some of the most loyal in the industry. Because your retention rate is legendary. Because you built something they're now trying to dismantle. We want that here." It was tempting, almost too good to be true. But I needed more than money. I needed security, respect, a place where I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder. Olivia seemed to sense this. "We're not perfect," she said, "but we don't eat our own. If you come here, you'll have a seat at the table. Real input, real authority." I asked for a day to think it over. She agreed, but I could tell she expected me to say yes. On the drive home, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, but also a simmering anger. Strathmore hadn't just tried to ruin me. They'd underestimated me. They thought I'd slink away quietly, grateful for whatever scraps they tossed my way. They were wrong. That night, I called Alex again. "If I do this," I said, "I want to bring my team with me. The ones who are left, the ones who haven't been chewed up and spit out yet. Can you make that happen?" He promised to try. The next morning, I walked into Strathmore's office with my head high. Leonard was waiting, Janice beside him, both looking smug and impatient. "Well?" Leonard asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "I have some questions," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Who will be handling the Miller account now that you've stripped my title? Who's going to manage the transition for the Harper Group?" Leonard waved a hand dismissively. "We'll redistribute responsibilities as needed. That's not your concern." "It is my concern," I shot back. "Those clients came here because of me. They stayed because of me. You think you can just hand them off to someone else, and everything will be fine?" Janice shifted uncomfortably, but Leonard just smiled. "You're not irreplaceable, Rachel. No one is." I slid the North Star offer letter across the table. "Actually, I am. Effective immediately, I resign. And I'd advise you to check your client contracts. Several have change of contact clauses. They can walk if I walk." Leonard's smile faltered. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said, standing. "You did. You forgot who built this place." I walked out, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. I called Olivia and accepted the offer. Within hours, Word spread. My phone blew up. Clients, colleagues, even people I barely knew, all wanting to know what happened. I told the truth. I had nothing left to lose. The fallout was swift and brutal. Strathmore tried to spin my departure as a mutual decision, but the clients knew better. Several threatened to pull their contracts unless I remained their point of contact. North Star's legal team swooped in, navigating the minefield with ruthless efficiency. But the real battle was just beginning. Strathmore wasn't about to let me go quietly. They accused me of stealing proprietary information, of poaching clients, of violating confidentiality agreements. They sent threatening letters, tried to intimidate my former team into staying. Some caved, but most followed me, tired of the constant fear and uncertainty. The stress took its toll. I lost weight, barely slept, jumped every time the phone rang. Jonah noticed. He started having nightmares again, waking up screaming for me in the middle of the night. I tried to shield him, but he was too smart, too sensitive. He knew something was wrong. My family wasn't much help. My mother called, lecturing me about loyalty and responsibility. My sister sided with her, insisting I should have been grateful for what I had. Only my father, quiet and steady, told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. The legal battle dragged on for months. Strathmore tried everything: smears, threats, even hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on me. They found nothing, but the process was exhausting. I started seeing a therapist, desperate for some way to cope. Through it all, North Star stood by me. Olivia kept her promises, giving me real authority, real respect. My team flourished, free from the constant fear of the axe. The clients followed, loyal as ever. But the scars remained. I found myself second-guessing every decision, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I became paranoid, suspicious of everyone. I pushed people away, afraid to trust, afraid to be hurt again. Then, one night, everything changed. I was working late, the office empty except for me and the cleaning crew. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." I froze, fear prickling down my spine. Was it a threat? A warning? I forwarded it to North Star's security team, but they found nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, waiting for me to slip. The next day, I got a call from an old friend at Strathmore. She sounded nervous, her voice barely above a whisper. "Rachel, be careful. Leonard's out for blood. He's been digging into your past, trying to find anything he can use against you." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence. I realized then that this wasn't just about business. It was personal. Leonard wanted to destroy me, to make an example of me. He couldn't stand that I'd beaten him at his own game. I decided I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I started documenting everything, every email, every call, every interaction. I hired my own lawyer, a bulldog named Carla who specialized in employment law. Together we built a case, gathering evidence of Strathmore's illegal tactics, their attempts to intimidate and harass. The final straw came when Jonah was followed home from school. He noticed a strange car parked outside, the same car that had been idling near our apartment for days. I called the police, but they found nothing. Still, the message was clear: back off, or else. I refused to be bullied. Carla filed a restraining order, and North Star's security team stepped up their patrols. I started carrying pepper spray, changed my routines, taught Jonah what to do if he ever felt unsafe. The pressure mounted, but I refused to break. I poured everything into my work, determined to prove that I was more than the sum of my scars. My team thrived, our client base grew, and North Star's Midwest office became the envy of the company. Eventually, the tide turned. Strathmore's tactics backfired. Clients left in droves, their reputation in shambles. Leonard was forced out, his own allies turning on him. Janice resigned, citing personal reasons. The company that had once felt like home was now a cautionary tale, a warning to others about the dangers of hubris and cruelty. I wish I could say I felt vindicated, that revenge was sweet. But the truth is, the victory felt hollow. I'd lost so much: friends, trust, my sense of safety. I'd become someone I barely recognized, hardened by betrayal and loss. But I survived. I rebuilt. I found new strength in the ashes of my old life. Jonah and I moved to a quieter neighborhood, closer to his school. I started volunteering at a local shelter, trying to give back, to find meaning in the chaos. The silence in our new home was different, peaceful, not oppressive. I learned to trust again, slowly, cautiously. I made new friends, reconnected with old ones. I even started dating, though that was its own minefield. Looking back, I realized that revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about reclaiming your power, your dignity, your sense of self. It's about refusing to let anyone else define your worth. I still have nightmares sometimes, about Leonard, about the threats, about losing everything all over again. But I wake up, hold Jonah close, and remind myself that we survived, that we're stronger than we think. If you're reading this, if you've ever been betrayed, ever lost everything you thought you could count on, know this: you are not alone. The world can be cruel, but it can also be beautiful. You can rebuild. You can find joy again. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well, refusing to let the bastards win.